Okay, I want to take some time now. It sounds like we got down to 13. So let's just chat about this. Oregon has about blank as many people per electoral vote as Rhode Island. And the reason I used Rhode Island is because Rhode Island, by land size, is the tiniest state. I'm from Delaware. Delaware is the second smallest state. We have that going for us. But Rhode Island is the smallest. What I wanted you to do was I wanted you to look at the numbers for Oregon and Rhode Island. So let's look at Oregon. Okay. Put these up on the board so you can play with them. Okay, so Oregon, so this is people per electoral vote. That's the unit we're looking at. People per electoral vote. So Oregon, I forget how many Oregon has. Oregon has 584,781. People per electoral vote. So, Morgan, to get you quickly caught up, the Electoral College is what determines the president in this country. Oregon has 7 electoral votes. And the reason we have 7, who wants to give me a quick reminder of why Oregon has 7 electoral votes? 2 senators.
And then I forgot the other 5.
5 representatives.
Yep.
So it bases on the House and the Senate. House and the Senate together tell us how many electoral votes there are in the country, and the states get a number of them equal to their representation. Is that fair? So what I did was I took the population of Oregon and divided it by 7 and got that number. About 4 million divided by 7 gives you that number. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now let's do Rhode Island. And when I say do Rhode Island, just look at Rhode Island. Rhode Island's right there.
264,107.
So I asked you in number 13 here. Oregon has about as many, has about as many people. And I'm looking for a multiplier. About how many times as many people does Oregon, okay, Sean's gonna try talking again real quick. About how many times more people per electoral vote does Oregon have than Rhode Island? Compare those numbers. About.
Twice.
Exactly what I was looking for. Isn't this number about twice as big as that number? Hey, if you don't believe Morgan or I, divide that number by that number.
Well, I was just thinking because it's 580,
Mhm.
it's almost like 6.
And that's almost like 3.
Yeah.
Exactly, Morgan. That's how I want you to think about it. That's exactly how I wanted you to think about it. It looks like Oregon has about twice as many people per electoral vote as Rhode Island. Nikki, what do you think about right now?
I can't see it.
Oh, read it about it. I hate to say this is the last day of class. Catering is woeful today. This is woeful.
I know.
We got an energy drink, a huge height flask.
Oh, yeah.
And sulfur.
Could we
Embarrassed. I want to see better in the winter.
Could we bring like fondue?
Fuck, what I want to see. Fuck. Oh, a little skillet. Okay, you ready?
We probably want to do that.
How about Alaska? I used Alaska because it's the biggest state by land size. Let's look up Alaska. I forget where Alaska is. Alaska is 247, 298.
Oh, that's the one I
It's like 2.36. Yeah, do we round or do we not?
I'm gonna let you choose.
Okay, so 2.30 then.
Do you see how Alaska and Rhode Island have essentially the same value? I mean, I'm rounding off in my mind. It's about twice as big too, isn't it?
But it has a
But if
fuller
you-
population.
Hold that thought. We're getting to that. Ellie, you're getting to where I want to go with this. Ellie is getting to where I want to go with this. Thank you for taking it that route. I appreciate it. But I'm not there quite yet. I want to make sure we understand the math before we dive into the differences. Is that okay? Thank you. How about, what was the next state? Wyoming, the least populous state.
Like 3.
Which is crazy if you think about it. There's actually fewer people in Wyoming than Alaska. Wyoming,
Yeah.
way at the bottom, 195,000. 167 if you want to get that precise. I would just call it about 200,000. I like Morgan's 600,000, 300,000, about 300,000, maybe 250,000, about 200,000. So about 3 times more Oregon has than Wyoming, yes?
I got 2.99.
2.99, I like it. Yeah. I'm just looking for kind of big, broad multiples here. Because these, you have to understand too, these populations are constantly changing. So to try to nail it down with super precision is a little bit of a cat chasing its tail. Yeah, Jenna.
So do you want us to write down, like,
Your numbers are fine.
2.2, or do you want us to write 2 and
It's fine.
3?
You wrote fine. Which is fine. How about California?
That one's hard for me to figure out because I did the math, how you said, and the numbers were really big.
How about California? California's 713,000. About, right? 713,000. What's the last digit there? 637. So I'm guessing what you did was the same thing. You divided this by that, right?
Yeah,
And what'd you get?
0.81.
It's about 8/10. It's below 1.
19.
All that tells you, Jack, you got it. It's about 8/10, or it's about 80%, or it's about 4/5. In other words, California has more people per electoral vote than Oregon does. All that means is if you're going to multiply it by a number to get to Oregon's, you have to multiply it by a number less than 1. Hopefully that makes, I mean, yes, that's why I put it's a slightly goofy fraction. If you want to use percent, you can use that too, 80%. But I just think of it as like 4/5 or about 80% in that neighborhood. Is that okay? So all that tells us is that Oregon has more people per electoral vote than California has more people per electoral vote than Oregon does. Now, is that okay? Are we buying this, Monica? Is this making sense? You buying this? Matthias, making sense? Amber? Thank you, friends. Okay. Now here's a criticism I have read about the Electoral College, and I actually agree with this. Electoral votes are worth different amounts depending on which state you're in, which is exactly true based on the math you just did. If everybody's electoral vote for the states was equivalent, what should all of the numbers we just did be? This is a bit of a tricky question. I apologize, but I think it's a good question. If your electoral vote was worth the same number of people regardless of the state you lived in, but you don't have to know that. No matter how many states there are, every number you just wrote in 13, 14, 15, and 16 would be what? Don't overthink this. 1. Exactly. If electoral votes were worth the same in every state, then Oregon's people per electoral votes would be the same as California's per electoral vote, which would be the same as Wyoming's, which would be the same as Delaware's, and so forth and so on. Which means all those numbers should have been 1. Does that make sense? Everybody buying that?
Yeah.
That's a nice connection you made, Ellie. Very nice, very nice. That's
1 is 1.
that's 100% correct too. Another nice connection. So that's the problem. Wyoming has the least number of people per electoral vote. Well, we'll get to what that means in a second. I want to stop right here and make sure you understand what I just said. No, that has the most number of people per electoral vote. Make sure you're dividing in the right way. Say that again. That's compared to Oregon. I'm talking about in general by itself. Yeah, you're comparing it to Oregon. So California has the most number, no, Texas does. Texas has the most number of people per electoral vote. That means Texas has the weakest electoral vote of all the states. Wyoming has the strong. We'll get back to that in a second. That might not make sense. We'll come back to that in a second. That makes sense? Yes, exactly, Larry. We'll come back to it. In case that doesn't make sense, we'll make it make sense.
It takes less people to make one.
Yeah.
Say it again, Larry.
It takes less people to make one.
In Wyoming, it takes fewer people to make one electoral vote. That means, assuming the electoral votes go the way of the popular vote, Wyoming has more power in its popular vote than Oregon does, than Texas does, than California does. And that doesn't seem fair to me. We'll come back to that in a second. We'll define fair momentarily. Mathematically fair, not politically fair, Morgan. I don't want to get into politics here. Just talk about the math. Is that fair? Right. You look pissed about something. I want to make sure you're happy.
No, I just feel stupid.
Why? You made one of the greatest connections earlier. Why do you feel stupid?
Because I thought there was 2 voices.
Well, you know why you thought that? Because the United States does weird things like annex territories. Puerto Rico, American Samoa, Guam, the U.S. Virgin Islands. We've got a number of territories that essentially are, unfortunately, I'm going to get pissed off here, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, are subject to all the taxation that the states are, but don't get to vote in our elections, which pisses me off nonstop. So I don't doubt that you're confused. I think there's more than, there's 50 states, there's Washington, D.C., there's actually 51 things up there, because D.C. is up there. That's not a state, it's a district, but it gets votes. But Puerto Rico, which pays American taxes, doesn't get to vote. Now that's ridiculous. So it doesn't surprise me that you're confused by that, especially with the way politics is right now, because you're constantly hearing about Puerto Rico and the fact that it gets annihilated by a hurricane, and then for some reason doesn't get proper aid delivered to it, even though it's a U.S. territory. So we're going to make you pay tax. I'm sorry, I'm going to stop right now. I need to stop. I need to dial it back a little bit.
You okay?
So it's okay. I'm fine. I'm fine. I need a sedative. Somebody give me a sedative. I got some pre-nursing students, right?
I was like, I want to be a producer.
There might- There you go. Here's Sean's rant. Okay, everybody good so far? Let's take 5 now. Yeah. Why don't we take 5? Let's take 5. I think I need to go roll around in the snow and calm down a little bit.